Turok 2 is a first-person shooter game sequel to the very successful Turok Dinosaur Hunter. First released for the Nintendo 64, it was one of the first games to use the expansion pack for the console, utilizing it to increase the on-screen resolution, resulting in crisp, beautiful graphics, which were incredible for their time. As with its prequel, Night Dive Studios took it upon themselves to bring this lost gem to Windows PCs. The question then on everyone's lips is, of course, is it any better than the original? Well, yes and no. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. The original development for this game actually began before the release of the first game, which says a lot about the expectations Acclaim had for it. Nevertheless, by the time of Turok 2's release, new and exciting games had already been released for both the N64 and the PC, pushing the boundaries of what cutting edge meant for the FPS genre. On the PC we had, of course, Quake 2, which upped the ante for eye candy with its considerable graphical improvements over its predecessor, from the polygon count to the usage of color lighting as well as its interconnected world. Unreal had also been on the market for a few months, and with its wide-open, imaginative locations and incredible visual fidelity, it was a sight to behold. As for the N64 itself, well, GoldenEye 007 had already brought a paradigm shift of what it meant to be a console FPS, with its believable, free-roaming, realistic settings, as well as its intricate and varied gameplay. From its graphics to the mission objective-based structure, GoldenEye 007 had shifted the goalposts for the entire genre. Turok 2 then had both big shoes to fill and, as before, had to face stiff competition, with games like Half-Life looming on the horizon. And once again, Iguana Entertainment proved that it was up to the challenge, and then some. Every single aspect of the original game had been expanded, improved and overhauled. Well, if I had to describe the concept of Turok 2 in as few words as possible, I'd say, go big or go home. But, enough with the history lesson. On to the game itself! As with the previous game, Iguana Entertainment shows off the graphical improvements of Turok 2 right from the get-go, with the company logos that are, once again, rendered in real time. In the game itself, though, things are a bit different this time around. For starters, the Native American protagonist from the first game is gone. In his place, we have the latest heir to the mantle of Turok, the young, muscular dude who goes by the name Joshua Fireseed. Our friend gets summoned by an alien lady called Aiden, the speaker of Forever Light, who sports a soothing voice, huge melons, rounded buttocks, and a thigh gap which was way ahead of its time. Anyway, Aiden tells you of the new threat to the Lost Land, the Primogen, a terribly powerful alien entity trapped in the wreckage of its lightship by the power of 5 energy totems erected by the Elders of the Lost Land. Naturally, the Primogen doesn't take kindly to the Elder's shenanigans. Thus, after awakening, it uses its telepathic abilities to ally with other alien races and rally its own troops to lay waste to the Lost Land and the energy totems that are keeping it imprisoned. There is a surprising amount of storytelling this time around, and it's all conveyed via quite lengthy and well-directed real-time cutscenes which are fully voice-acted. This may not sound very important these days, but the amount of voice dialogue was something of a revelation for the N64. Surprisingly, it mostly holds up, even by today's standards. As with the first game, you will visit a handful of enormous levels. However, instead of 8, this time the levels are 6. This may sound as a downgrade. However, the sheer scope, variety and length of each one make the original's levels seem tiny and simplistic by comparison. So, what else is different? Well, the jungles and primitive themes are almost completely absent from Turok 2. In their place, we have a mix of Persian aesthetics, natural environments and sci-fi technology. The locations are split up between 3 main themes. The first 2 levels are much more urban, followed by more open locales in the next 2 before going completely sci-fi in the final couple of levels. Graphically, the game is a considerable step up from the first Turok as well. Every level has its own distinct look and feel, light years apart from the differences between levels in the previous game. Textures are no longer shared between them. Instead, every level has its own tile set, tailor-made for its battlefield, with real-time lighting enhancing the atmosphere in a beautiful way. Level geometry is also far more complex, leading to more realistic environments. Every single area you will visit is packed with small incidental details, from abandoned houses filled with corpses in the ruined cities, to mushrooms and crystalline formations in the more natural spaces. Suffice it to say that, in terms of visuals, well, Turok 2 stands the test of time much better than its predecessor. Enemies are much more detailed and, astonishingly, even better animated than last time. From dinosaurs to human-dinosaur hybrids, to those ape-like behemoths from last time, to sentient cockroaches, to monstrosities that look like what would happen if the Predator had sex with a steampunk machine, enemies are nothing if not varied and imaginative. They're smarter too. Well, some of them are. Most will still rush to rip your face off with claws/mandibles or snipe at you from afar, but you'll often see them hiding behind cover or rolling out of the way when they are threatened. Iguana also seemed to work miracles with the game sound. Going completely against conventional wisdom at the time, they not only managed to cram plenty of voice acting in the game, but also give it a wonderful, evocative soundtrack that is still considered one of the greatest of all time. Environmental and incidental sound effects abound as well. For example, listen for the distant echoes of fighting in the port of Adia. The game consistently manages to keep the same high standard in its sound from start to finish. Along with all this goodness, there are many shrieks and grunts, different for every single enemy in the game. As for the Turok series signature trait, the arsenal, Turok 2 continues a tradition. I'd go as far as to say that it offers one of the, if not the, finest weapons collection in any FPS game, designed to cause maximum damage to your hapless enemies. As an example, the only shotgun in the game is a double-barreled one, and it only escalates in geometric progression from there. Everything is bigger, better and better, with meatier sound effects, and thanks to an innovative dismemberment system, every blast from your weapons will punch holes, destroy whole chunks, and generally unleash untold amounts of whoop-ass to anyone foolish enough to stand against you. Finally, enemies will recognize their imminent end when they see you wielding one of the more high-end weapons, and you will chuckle seeing them panicking and running around in a futile attempt to escape. Of course, no review of Turok 2 is complete without mention of the cerebral bore. This wonderful contraption homes in on intelligent beings' brains, drilling them out in a stream of grey matter and blood before exploding, leaving behind a delicious, gory mess. Rip and tear! Rip and tear! As for the gameplay, well, just like last time, Turok's adventures in the game revolve around navigating the maze-like maps, collecting the keys necessary to open portals to the rest of the levels. However, things are not as simple as they were the first time around, as the game has evolved, now bearing even more similarities to Metroid Prime than before. In fact, I'd go as far as to say that Turok 2 is actually Metroid 1 in 3D, with all the pluses and minuses that might entail. The game is generally slower paced, with more emphasis on exploration. It also lacks the fluid motion of the first game. Now, this doesn't mean that the game is plodding along, just that it doesn't move like Grease Lightning as its prequel did. Also, jumping around platforms isn't as prominent a feature as it used to be, although you'll still have to make a few tricky jumps here and there. Taking a leaf from GoldenEye 007's book, you'll also be tasked with completing several mission objectives like saving children and POWs, destroying ammo storage facilities, committing alien genocide, and banishing unholy demons and the undead. After you do all this, at the end of every level, you'll have to fight the hordes of the Primogen's lackeys who are hell-bent on destroying the aforementioned energy totems. Also, like before, in every level beginning with number 4, after you've defended the energy totem, you'll have to face a boss. And, incredible as it may sound, they managed to make them even more awe-inspiring than last time. First time this happens, you'll have cleared the underground hell that is a lair of the blind ones to face their leader. To give you a hint, let's just say that in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Regardless, every single one of them is destined for a slow, painful and agonizing death in your hands, as you will, literally, systematically tear them limb from limb before finally delivering the final blow in a suitably gory way. Also, in every level apart from the first, you'll have to find a sacred eagle feather, which will have to be offered to Turok's ancestral spirits. To do that, you'll have to find the blue war portal in every level, which in turn will lead you to the spirit shrine. To unlock said portal, you'll have to hunt down a switch. In return for all this, the spirit fathers will bestow you with a sacred talisman, granting you special abilities like walking on molten magma, riding spiritual winds, and seeing invisible pathways over chasms. On top of all this, you'll have to search the levels using these sacred talismans to hunt down the keys to the Primogen's lair. This means you'll have to revisit those older levels in order to complete the game. As well, there's a new enemy lurking in the shadows. Its name? Oblivion. This fuck bastard and its flesh-eater army have erected fake warp portals that lead you to a cold, dark, steampunk environment full of those asshole flesh-eaters. Good news is, after you kick their ass, you'll be rewarded with a piece of the nuke weapon. Oh yes. Oh yes indeed.
You have found
As you clearly understand, Turok 2 is one big game. And you'll need to crank those navigating skills up to 11, since even though Iguana Entertainment has made every area of every level different and has added a lot of distinctive landmarks and colors, the convoluted and truly colossal map layouts mean that you could end up meandering the same corridors for that goddamn war portal switch you missed. Goddamn fucking Lair of the Blind Ones. In any case, at least enemies don't respawn like they did last time. Well, they do, but yeah, here's how it works. When you return to an area via teleporter, some enemies will respawn. Not all, but some. Just enough to keep the place populated. You might also notice that Joshua carries a fairly limited amount of ammunition, and the game lacks the traditional backpack power-up, which doubles the ammo you can carry. This means you'll have to make every shot count, or so you might think. One thing I've never heard anyone mention is the various restoration rooms of the game. Just keep your ears open for this sound. Whenever you hear it, it means that there's a room with respawning ammo and health pickups very close by. Much like those bug spawning tubes in the original Metroid, minus the enemies. As such, in truth, you're never really in any real danger of running out of ammunition. So, enough about that. What's new? Well, just like Turok 2's weaponry, Night Dive have gone full overkill with the improvements. Not only have they given Turok 2 the delicious treatment they gave to its prequel, with endless customization options, they went and did an entirely new engine for the game. The Kex engine supports many of the enhancements that were present in the first game, like light shafts, doing a Copperfield on the admittedly light fogging of the game, bloom lighting, support for DirectX as well as OpenGL, and adding some newfangled techniques like motion blur and ambient occlusion, the latter of which, keep in mind, has a big impact on performance. Top kick! There are also a lot of options for those more inclined to the technical side of things, and hey, online multiplayer is here, and it's working. Other gameplay enhancements are the option for ledge grabbing, which helps you correct an ill-made jump, and another one for alternative weapon bobbing. You see, in the original game, weapons bobbed in a way that was different from what you're used to. Well, personally, I always thought weapon bobbing was nice and fine, but in case you don't like it, well, you can replace it with more standard bobbing animations. The most useful gameplay option, though, is the hints display option, which will alleviate a lot of the headache for newcomers, and people who just aren't very good at navigating complex environments. This option will indicate important switches and items as exclamation marks on your HUD. Of course, you might as well turn it off if you want a purer experience, but it's still there if you want to make it easier for yourself. You can also save at any time now, instead of having to hunt down the scarce save points of the game. Those save points now serve as warp hubs, which you can use to quickly teleport your way around the maze-like levels of the game. Night Dive has also gone as far as to add a few more than there used to be in the original game. Props marked for this Night Dive. This was a fucking brilliant idea. However, the single most important addition to the remastered version is the original N64 soundtrack. In case you didn't know, the N64 had, quite bizarrely, higher quality music than the PC version, whose Red Book audio was butchered with nasty cuts before looping. It's still in the game if you prefer it though. Like I said, you can tailor this game to suit your needs exactly. That's not to say that it's a pixel-perfect port like before though. A few things are changed, like the font of the game in the main menu. Sound balance is off if you opt for the N64 soundtrack, as the music will be a lot quieter than the sound effects, forcing you to fiddle around with the sound options to find the right balance. Also, explosions are often the wrong color. For example, the shredder should always create blue explosions, while the plasma rifle should blow up in green energy. This isn't the case here, as you'll often see them in various other colors, like purple for example. As far as I know, there's no way to rectify this, so you'll have to live with it. Small niggle, I know, but still. It didn't happen if you played the original PC release with N-Glide, for example. In closing, the game is one of the masterpieces of its time, and Night Dive have done a remarkable job to modernize it, while, at the same time, keeping its aesthetics intact. In spite of this, I'll have to say that even though technically Turok 2 is the very definition of a bigger and better sequel, it is perhaps too big for some people. Because of this, and due to the increased difficulty of the game overall, it is not as easy a game to recommend, since, just like the original Metroid, it is a game for experienced gamers only. If you are not up to the challenge, you'll never finish it. The price of the game might seem a bit high as well, just like with the original remaster. Wait, isn't that an oxymoron? Anyway, in spite of all this, Turok 2 was, and still is, one of the great FPS games, even though it's a relic from an era when games didn't hold your hand and, frankly, actively tried to kick your ass. But if challenge and exploration is what you're after, buy it, prepare your anus, play it, and shout even louder than before.